Gunderson, and then Pam Piper-Roth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Ian Gunderson. I reside in Boise, Idaho, representing myself. I am in opposition to House Bill 404. My concern over the proposed legislation falls into three specific areas. Article 1, Section 10 of the Idaho Constitution, the freedom of assembly, violation of due process, and the emergency clause. Under the Idaho Constitution, citizens are guaranteed the right to peaceably assemble to carry out three sacred civic duties: to consult for the common good, to instruct their representatives, and to petition their legislators for redress of grievance. On October 31st of last year, Occupy Boise organization transmitted a letter to the Department of Administration notifying that agency that members of its organization would be availing themselves of their rights guaranteed under the Freedom of Assembly section of the Constitution. The current AG opinion on House Bill 404 conflates the protections afforded the freedom of speech, which is in the Idaho Constitution is Article 1, Section 9, and its limitations promulgated by a decision of the U.S. Supreme Court, and the protections afforded Idaho citizens under Article 1, Section 10. There were 97 years of American jurisprudence between the adoption of the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, in which we find the freedom of speech clause, and Idaho's adoption of its own constitution. The framers of Idaho's constitution knew full well that speech and assembly were fundamentally different concepts, and so crafted two separate sections in this sacred contract with its citizens to ensure access to the freedoms guaranteed under both rights. The laws of this country are based on one irrefutable truth: the presumption of innocence. When a citizen is cited or arrested for a supposed violation of law, it rests with the state to prove his or her guilt. Upon this foundational truth, the Civil Rights Act was enacted in 1964. This act extends federal protections to a truth held as dearly by many Idahoans: the right to property and the protections against illegal seizures of that property. The language in this bill would purport to permit government the authority to automatically seize property and dispose of it without due process or benefit of court, and is a breach of the public's trust. As you heard earlier, even Chief Masterson of the Boise Police Department has stated that his agency will not participate in the property seizure process identified in this bill. No law enforcement entity in America is authorized to automatically dispose of private property. Further, the Federal Civil Rights Act prohibits states from attempting to extend indemnification to its employees or contractors from private lawsuits that would stem from illegal seizures of property. Historically, emergency clauses have only been enacted in new state laws when there is an imminent threat to the public's health, welfare, or safety. And I would point out that aesthetic standards is nowhere mentioned.
Mr. Gunderson, if you could try to wrap up, and if you want to make that part of our minutes, we'd appreciate a copy of your written minutes.
The public's welfare, as stated by the Idaho State Police and the Boise Police Department, the Occupy Boise visual protest does not constitute an endangerment to the public's safety. Further, the public's welfare was protected by Occupy Boise's careful selection of a site that is not currently being used for any state purpose, and in full knowledge that the state's own declared future use of the property entails a major modification of the site. Finally, the public's health has been safeguarded by Occupy Boise's meticulous management of its own operation, as outlined in its 42-page operational manual. In regard to the Occupy Boise visual protest, there is no threat that would warrant the inclusion of an emergency clause. If this bill is to be passed into law this session, let it come to force at the regular time of any new legislation at the beginning of the 2013 fiscal year, July 1st, 2012. House Bill 404 represents three substantial risks to all Idahoans. It attempts to eliminate our rights of freedom of assembly. It attempts to violate due process, and in so doing ensures a governmental taking. And it attempts to delude the public by raising the specter that anyone who would so choose to exercise their rights to assemble or speech would be considered a direct threat to the public's health, welfare, or safety. Please reject this proposed law, or at least fully utilize the authority of your office to eliminate the illegal and questionable language of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Pam Piper-Roth and Christy